Sec for this. What is up, guys? This is my new YouTube channel. You might know me from Atlas's stream, Atlas Thug, or Tom Foe. We did a stream together, but here is my first interview. I'm really excited because this is one of the first YouTubers I got introduced to through Atlas. So, yeah, introduce yourself.
What's up, y'all? My name is Matt from Foulball Productions. I'm an alt-right YouTuber. I'm I guess yeah, it's kind of weird to like identify myself now because when I started doing YouTube, most of what I was doing was like media criticism or just kind of like vague political commentary. But now I'm like so dialed in with my like America First, America like focused political commentary that I don't even have like a spiel for myself net yet. I have to develop one.
Dude, 100%. And I've watched the development too, because at first, I remember your very first couple interviews, it was like, or at least political interviews. It was the Gen Z guys, it's Atlas Thug,
Yeah.
it's Right Wing Coalition, it's Tom
Yeah.
Foe, and there's smaller YouTubers in this sphere. But, I will shout out Atlas Thug here. He has been getting a lot of recognition through like the Groiper Generals, if you want to call them that. They are uh, Beardson, Tyler Russell, Wurzelroot, and then what's the other one? Let me look here. Totally forget. But there's a ton of Groipers who've started to recognize him. I remember being in Beardson's chat and Atlas entered in. He's like, "Oh, what's up, Atlas? I've seen your videos and I really like you and everything."
Cool.
Um, yeah, 100%. So today, I kind of wanted to get like your backstory of yourself and like how you entered the political scene. 'Cause I know for like you were an actor,
hmm
and I don't think you've talked about that a lot.
Well, I don't talk about it anymore just because my focus has been so much more political observations, critique, the kind of like America First critical lens of the Trump administration and just sort of the government at large. So it doesn't really come up. I don't really talk about my personal life as much. Not that I'm opposed to it or anything, but I used to do a lot more just sort of broad, like what you'd consider like podcasting, where it's kind of open topics. So my personal life, who I am, the types of things I'm into or whatever, that would come up a lot more because the topics were more fluid. Like it wasn't really as focused. But I got into YouTube during the pandemic, I guess. I used to follow this guy. I still follow him. I just don't keep up on it anymore because it's just not my sphere of influence anymore or my sphere of interest. But there's a guy named Gary Nerdrotic. Are you familiar?
I think I've seen like one or two videos of his. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I was like an actor, right? I'm an actor in LA, and I'm like living through the 2010s, like the wokest times in history, and I'm reading all these awful scripts and all my favorite, IPs, my favorite TV shows, movies are just becoming woke trash, and it's really bumming me out. And I felt so alone in Los Angeles with these observations. Like I had a few homies that kind of noticed, but it wasn't as big of a deal to them, I guess. And I'm sitting there watching all my favorite shit just get utterly destroyed. And as it goes on, I'm feeling demoralized and depressed. And lo and behold, I find all these dudes on YouTube who are just roasting this shit, seeing it accurately. And then I realized, oh, there's this whole community of dudes online talking about this, doing this. And I was like, wow. So I gravitated towards that hard. Like I watched, if there's a YouTuber named Mauler and he does these hours long critiques and roasts of like the Star Wars prequels and like bad Game of Thrones episodes. And there's a guy, Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, all those dudes, geeks and gamers. I kind of like gravitated towards them and I just started absorbing their content. And then the pandemic hit and I had some downtime. So I just kind of started doing it like, I don't know, it's like a hobby or whatever, just to kind of get into it. So I did that in that sphere for a while and did okay for myself. Like I had Gary from Nerdrotic was on my show a few times. We talked about The Expanse, which is like my favorite science fiction property ever. It's a fantastic show if you've never seen it. And I did that for a while, and then I don't know, I kind of got tapped out with that side of YouTube because after a while I just kind of felt like, yeah, like we won the conversation, so fucking now what? Like we're just gonna keep going along saying everything's gay. Like you guys got that covered. Like, I don't really feel like my voice is needed in this conversation. I feel like you have it, you guys got it locked down. You know, it wasn't the dangerous times in YouTube where, you know, saying the wrong thing was going to get your whole channel bombed and we needed to have like another replacement ready to go. It was like, no, y'all are practically institutions at this point. So I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm needed. I feel like I'd just be like one more voice saying the same shit, and it felt insincere. So I floated for a while about what I was going to do with YouTube. I even took a break from YouTube for a while because I didn't feel completely like focused on like what I was doing. And then I kind of started like casually getting back into it, being driven. And I was essentially like a MAGA cheerleader for a while, you know,
I
like I
used
got
to be
into
the same way, bro. I used to be
really?
the same way. I'm 24, so in 2016 it was a lot different, but back then I was just like, yeah, Trump's the best. And like, Nick was out there too saying the same stuff. So, you can't really blame me. But the worst part is I, fell for it again award, just like you
Yeah.
in 2024. You know, I kind of fell off watching Nick for like a year. I didn't really know his take on Trump in 24. I did watch him before then, but mostly through clips and things like that. But I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? Like Kamala, Trump, it's like I just can't vote for Kamala. And now it's like Nick was right, bro. Like Trump is a disaster. This sucks. Every day we're getting embarrassed by every country. I feel like a loser.
Dude, you know, it's funny. I'm reading Joey's book right now. I'm reading Generation Z. I'm almost, or that's what
American
it's called.
History Z.
American,
It's on my
American History
table
Z.
right now. Yep.
Yeah, it's so good. And I'm reading it, and he's talking about the parts with Trump, you know, during the pandemic, and then all the shit that he went through with the lawfare and him surviving the assassination attempt. And I was, you know, I remember I forgot how like gassed up I was, how excited and pumped I was. And, you know, if you remember, like towards the end of 2024, the momentum was so in his favor. The culture had shifted, you know, like
Yep.
John Jones is doing the Trump dance after he knocks out a dude. You're just like, oh my God, like we're so back. We're so here. We're so ready. And, you know, what you were saying about Nick was right. I wasn't even exposed to any of that. Like when you were talking about the Gen Z guys like Atlas and Tom Foe and stuff that I you know, do streams with and stuff. All of that was brand new to me. I even did a video about the subject because I had no idea all these dudes were over here just going hard. I had no clue. And the only thing I knew about Fuentes was I just thought he was like an agitator. I thought he was just like a far right troll who was like, and I mean that literally, like a troll. Like he was there to just sort of like say negative things and be a dick. I didn't realize he was one of the most insightful political commentators out there. I had no idea. I was never exposed to anything he did. The only thing I remember, and I did a video about Fuentes. The only thing I remember really ever seeing was when he went on Alex Jones with Ye. And I was
And
just
it,
like,
yeah,
who is this fucking kid? Like, look at this freak show we've got going on here. This is crazy. Like, I had no idea, dude. I'm
totally,
unk as
yeah.
hell.
Dude, and the funniest thing about that too is like Nick is a ride or die for Ye, but Nick is just a loyal person in general. Like we can talk about this recent beef with Sneeko. It's like he was like there for him no matter what, and then it came to this end where it was like, you know, they had a friendship for so long, but then they beef and then they're not beefing. And then it's like, okay, now you're talking shit about Christians and white people for like two
Yeah.
months straight. And it's like, okay, bro, like we're done. We're done.
And I think you're right that Nick's a loyal guy because I was thinking about that last night when he was talking about Clav, and Clav's just getting totally raked right now, and
100%.
it's
Yep.
it's looking like, from my observation as someone who doesn't watch Clav but just sees like the clips here and there, it just looked like, you know, it's hard to ascend that fast and then maintain it without you getting fucked up along the way. You know, like a guy like Nick, right? Like he's had such a rough road and he's ascended in this kind of like gradual line, but he's earned every step. Whereas, not to say Clav didn't earn it, excuse me, but he went from like anonymous to like nationwide fame over like 3 weeks or something. Like it went from me hearing him offhandedly mentioned by Nick to him being all over my timeline in a
Yep.
matter of a week or two. And so, you know, when you get to that level, like that's hot, that's fast. It's hard to maintain that level without crashing. And I'm looking at it now and I'm like, man, Clav, it's not looking good. But Nick has not even said a mildly negative thing about him, other than he just said, I wish he didn't get the nose job, or he doesn't endorse it or something like that. Not even that he wish he didn't get it, just
Yeah,
something, you know. But he's
he's
right there by his side. Like when you say about how loyal he is, it's like he is loyal.
And even then, he's like talked about Clav like being involved with Jewish donors and
Mm-hmm.
this whole Baccarat thing, which Nick is vindicated on. I don't know if you've like seen any of this, but recently the Baccarat club that Clav was a part of, they kicked him out of it, and now they want a $1 million investment back from him after kicking him out, and it's owned by Jews.
Mm.
So and Nick still really likes the guy,
Yeah.
but Clav isn't really politically motivated. He doesn't know
No.
much about politics. You know,
And he's kind of
he
an
knows a
idiot.
lot about yeah, yeah. Well, for sure, because
Let's be honest.
he cares about looks.
Yeah.
And you know, Atlas has talked about this too, which is completely true. The reason Nick is so on board with Clav is because it pushes against all this feminist bullshit we've been dealing with, at least Gen Z. I mean, sure, for you, you've dealt with women who aren't like crazy feminists. Maybe or you have, but like it's a
No, yeah, I have.
minority, you know? But like for Gen Z, it's way worse, man. Like we deal with that. It's every woman, pretty much, you know,
Bro,
unless you go
trust
to,
me. I know all about it because so when I was in college, it was starting to pop off. I took like sociology courses, right? And I like as like an accompaniment to my acting education. And this shit was nuts. You know, this shit was so anti-white, so anti-American, so anti-male. And you could see like this was the first I'd ever been to exposed to this type of this ideology. It was like my first encounter with it. And that was like 20 years ago. You know, it was when I was in college. So I went out in the world and in New York, and you don't really see it as much. But when I moved to Los Angeles, that's when it was live. And you know, because I was pursuing acting, it's not really a like there's not a like a narrow age demographic. It's everybody. So most of the chicks that I did know were younger than me. They were in their 20s, and bro, like it was so tough to navigate. It was so tough to like exist in that sphere. You know, I would like complain to like my mom and she'd be like, well, don't bring it up. I'm like, I never bring it up. I never bring up this politics. It's just always kind of launched at me everywhere I go. So no, brother, I completely understand. Trust me.
yeah, 100%. But for like, I do think though for Gen Z it has been multiplied by like the greatest extent you've ever imagined, and that's why
Mm.
Atlas is so adamant about this because you know millennials at the very least they did deal with some women who were just like not political, you know.
It
They
did,
didn't
yeah. Especially when I was younger. When I was younger, it wasn't like that. It was like people would be political, like under the Obama administration, like people were political, but it wasn't this purity test. It wasn't like identifying outgroup enemies. It was just that, yeah, like, you'd probably be political, but it wasn't like a make or break. Like it wasn't so top of mind. It wasn't this thing it was the most important thing to women. It was just accompanying, other personality traits.
Yeah, 100%. And today I was listening to a podcast with these two brothers named Frojax. They're kind of more in the Wignat sphere, you know.
Okay.
They're more so like white identitarian, non-Christian. But Right Wing Coalition did an interview with them today,
Oh,
and
cool.
they you should watch it. It's amazing. I
Yeah.
don't know how to pull up clips yet. This is my first time, but um, he delved really deep into the women question and of like how to solve it. And Right Wing Coalition's position was basically like we we really do just need to change the culture because and it's hard too because women do change the culture because men chase women, women don't necessarily chase men. So the way to do that, and you've seen his older videos about like rock and roll and how that influenced the culture and everything. He was talking about how we need to make art, we need to make all these different things because women aren't easily influenced. You know, they're
Hmm.
not um, like hard to, you know, they're not hard to be malleable. You know, they're
No,
very
no, they're not. But I think he's right. Like, you're not gonna red pill modern chicks. Like you're just not really going to do it. You can maybe take like an individual girl, like if you start dating her and you're very persuasive, you could probably red pill her away, but
Yeah,
you're not going to take care of the culture at large. And the problem is, and this is true about women. I think it's something that Nick has said is that, what used to kind of keep women in line were like other women, were like older women would kind of make sure that they didn't whore too
100%.
much,
Yeah.
that they would, get married and stuff like that. And they would do like the right thing. But now that the culture has shifted into this matriarchy that resents men and blames men for every little thing that goes wrong. It is this thing where there's no kind of enforcement structure to kind of correct their brains or corral their brains, and it just becomes a negative feedback loop from every girl in their life and the older women too. It's like we are seeing like some development with the trad girl movement, which I think a lot of that's LARP, but at least it's a bit of a cultural foothold. So I feel like if the culture can change and then the women can reinforce a positive culture on each other, because like me just trying to go to random chicks or like, just the like women in general, it's like it's not gonna affect anything. The culture as a whole needs to shift.
Yeah, and this is an analogy that Right Wing Coalition or Joey made in that interview. He said, like, if you're at a high school, right, and you're trying to influence the culture, you're not just going to try to start like a TPUSA, right? Like, that's just not going to work on everyone. He said, what you need to do is start our Young Republicans or something like that, something that is like, right wing. And then what you need to do next is get the football player who's attractive, who's tall, maybe the quarterback or someone like that to like join that group. And he even said like this is like it's a small like um it it's kind of an illusion almost, like it just doesn't really make sense, but in like a larger picture, if you really think about it, it's like if this was on a larger scale, imagine the football player, instead of a football player it's like a musician or a pop star or a NFL player who is taking on right-wing positions. The women are going to realize the most desirable men are coming from the right wing, not the left wing. And that's the problem we have now with the culture. It's like if you're left wing, you get all the women. If you're on a dating app and your profile says liberal, women will just kind of like track to that. If all like
Right. It's a filter for sure. I wouldn't say that left wing dudes get all the women, but I think,
I'm talking
for
about
a
more
regular
so.
dude, I think if you're like just a regular dude, if they're just filtering for, they're just selecting for what they desire, like they're gonna filter out any kind of right winger. It's like, so a left winger or something like that, like centrist, is gonna get more of an opportunity. But I think going back to the Clav thing, I think that's why he has attracted such a following and why people find him so fascinating is because, yeah, you either kind of bend to the matriarchy if you're like a regular, not super high status guy, or you become a super high status guy and then you transcend all of that and it doesn't really matter what your politics are.
Yeah, 100%. I think I didn't really explain it too well. I think his position more so was like, these famous people, or maybe not even famous, but like starting in high schools or colleges, you have the star football player. If he's a right wing, quote unquote, extremist from where our views are with Nick, then the women will follow. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just true of everything. That's just true
Yeah.
of life with women. They're not meant to like be creating culture, they're meant to follow culture. And so that was more of where I was going with it. And I thought it
Mm.
was really interesting too, because he agreed with the Frojax brothers a lot. They consider themselves deists, which is a little weird. They
I
explained
don't
it a
know.
little bit in the
What does
episode.
that mean?
From what they said, they basically said like natural law. They believe in natural law, not like divine law, like Christians believe. Because Christians believe that the world is made up of divine law, right? Like women
Right.
are meant to be a certain way, men are meant to be a certain way. But for them, it's more so just like natural law, as in like humankind is meant to be this way, which isn't a huge difference. It's just with and
Uh,
without God,
it's pretty
basically.
different. It's
It
pretty
is. It
different
is.
because, like, what we're seeing in our culture right now is this return to hypergamy, where you have a guy like, let's use Clav as the example, but just pick any high status guy, athletes, musicians, like, anyone with like a big Instagram following. Like they're collecting up so many of the women because they have all the high status. So in our primal kind of what's the word, like evolutionarily biologized minds, you know what I mean, like the history of our species, that represented like resources and protection. So before Christianity and kind of before like even organized society, that's sort of how it would be. Hypergamy was the norm because that one guy could provide so much protection and provide so much resources that he would have his pick of all the women and would be able to have as many women as he wanted because he's the high status, like, like a warlord or something. It's kind of like, what are you going to really fucking do about it? And so
Yeah.
we're seeing that now with like the destruction of these kind of Christian values and sort of societal structured values, that where you pair off one man, one woman under God, this kind of hypergamy has returned because that's the natural order. And so the fact that like these guys are advocating for that, I'm like, I don't agree with that. I don't see that. I feel like that's just going to end up, that's what we have now, I think.
I totally agree, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying for like I wasn't saying in general that it's the same. I'm saying for the average normie who
Oh,
isn't a Christian,
yeah, I
they are.
wasn't saying you were saying that. I was just like, I don't like their argument.
No, I totally disagree with them as well. And Alice is on the same page. Tom Foe, we're all on the same page about this stuff with
Okay.
the wig
Okay.
now. Totally. And I've talked to them a bunch. But what I'm saying is, especially with the interview, it seemed like they got along pretty well. But like, this is the whole point about Nick is he says he wants it to be a Christian movement. He doesn't want it to be anything different. Um, and even just accepting deism or accepting like pagans, it does kind of corrupt the movement towards something that isn't natural. But their belief is natural law versus like divine law. And that's a huge difference. And I don't really want them in the movement either.
Hmm.
But at the very least, they are pushing the message forward. And I'll send you the interview afterward.
Yeah,
Afterwards,
I
you'll be
definitely
able
want to
to
see it.
see what they're saying. But I I mean, Nick has gone hard against this stuff. It's just
Yeah.
not. It's not. The Groypers are a Christian movement. Like that's what it is at the baseline.
I agree. And I think it's actually kind of necessary because it was something that he was talking about. I don't remember. It was last night or the night before, sometime this week, where he was kind of addressing, like, it was about the Joe Lonsdale thing. It was the Austin Franco thing. And he was saying, like, how he does, like when we win, so to speak, but if he, if our movement achieves power, it's like, he does want a guy like Joe Lonsdale to be treated with dignity and, human decency, not to just be like killed or extricated from society. But he's like, but there's a lot of other people that probably wouldn't. And I think the distinction there is the Christian faith, is having the Christian faith as a baseline, because we are in a way like undergoing a war, right? If we're all following through on like Nick's mission the way he puts it out there, and the idea is kind of like this long march, like that's a kind of a political war that we're engaging in. And it is important to have a foundational like moral code and value when you're engaging in something like that, because like he said, it could get out of hand. It could get very ugly. It could become violent in a way that's very destructive. So I think like the Christianity part is very important to keep at the center of it, because that's like those are the guiding principles of every action you take.
I totally agree. And that's why I'm like so against Wignats because their whole view of it is like if we're all white, then we're just going to be fine. If we're all white, then society is going to be perfect. And Joey pointed this out in their interview. It's like we are imperfect people. As Christians, we do believe we are imperfect people and there's always going to be societal problems. And even on the individual level, there's still going to be people robbing stores. There's still going to be these
Yeah.
problems, maybe not as big as they are now with multiculturalism, but that's why religion matters so much. But I think from their point of view, it was really just like they are very logical. There are people who have high IQs. I do believe the Frotek brothers do have high IQs, but and I've seen their other videos and they talk about like I tried to like follow God and I go to church and everything, but I just can't figure it out. And this is like the same thing for people like Nietzsche and all these people with high IQs. They have a difficulty finding God. Um, and I don't necessarily know if that's a high IQ problem or if that's more so just them wanting a world that doesn't exist, like wanting all white people just thrive in like, heaven on earth or whatever. I don't know necessarily. I've never talked to them, but that does kind of seem to be the idea where it's like white people, if we just collectivize, if we're all together, our society will be almost perfect. But that's why the teachings of Christ are so important. And it's like, we're all fallen. We are all, we're
Well,
all,
it's also you can't extricate the two. Like European society wouldn't be European society without Christianity. Like they're
yep,
inextricably linked. The Vikings are not the ones who created the West. You know what I mean? It wasn't the
yeah,
Celtic tribes. All due respect to my Irish brethren, but it wasn't. Those were not the people who rose and created empires that shaped the world. It was the Christians. That's who rose and created the West. So to say that it's some kind of inherent in our race is ridiculous. I mean, it's like that's just like historically inaccurate.
I
It's the
totally
Christian
agree.
Europe that rose.
I totally agree. And even if you look at Germany today, or even like 20 years ago, before migrants fled their country, they were like the number one. Like, this is why Hitler rose, is because there were so many people out there who were involved in degeneracy, even in a majority white society. They were going to
It's a
brothels. There
good
were,
point.
that was just
There
happening.
was another element there too.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I new YouTube channel. Let's not put it out there. But there was a
We're going one and done, baby. Let's go.
okay. We can't say this just up front. The Jews did do some stuff. Let's put that out there. But yeah. But even in white societies, there is a proclivity towards like like open sexuality. In any society, really. In a Muslim country, you'll get your head cut off. In a Christian country, they'll try to save you. That's the
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good
we
point.
we we accept people who are fallen because we know we are fallen ourselves. I sin every day. I'm sure you do. I'm sure everyone does. And that's another topic I wanted to bring up because I never heard you talk about it, is your faith. Where are you at right now with that?
Well, I'm I'm much further along than I was. I think maybe even like a year ago. I think it was probably so. Like I was raised Catholic, but pretty secular, right? Like both my parents are Catholic, but they're not really practicing. Like we go to church on occasion. Like I was baptized, but I was never confirmed. And like my grandmother, she's super. Both my grandmothers are super Catholic, and it was like it was a tradition in my family, but it wasn't something I was ever exposed to. But it wasn't even something like I was ever really given a choice on. It was just something that like both my parents were so secular because they had had such a bad relationship with Catholicism when they were kids. They both went to Sunday like Catholic school, and they hated it. You know, like they got smacked by the nuns and shit. They just have a negative impression of Catholicism in general. And they're boomers. They're secular left wing boomers. So they just never really embrace it. And so, neither did I, but I was always curious about the question of God. I was never satisfied by kind of any answer I had. Now, to be fair, I didn't really dig too deep into like Christianity, but I was just on the question of whether he existed or not. I was never convinced by any argument, so I just kind of remained agnostic for a while. I just kind of kept my mind open to the possibility. And then when I was about 18, I found God, and it was he found me, and I started having a relationship with God, and I always was a believer ever since then. And it wasn't really formed by any kind of Christian faith up until relatively recently. It wasn't something I started embracing until probably the past year or so, year and a half, and I've been a lot more. I read the Bible, I've accepted Jesus Christ, and I kind of like I go through it. But I still haven't partaken in like a church. I haven't walked through like being confirmed or anything like that. But I definitely consider myself like a practicing Christian.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I'm the same as where you're at and Atlas. I talked to Atlas about this a lot, but he says he's religiously homeless, not Christ homeless, like he doesn't have a relationship with God, but religiously homeless because it is really hard. For me, I grew up in a Protestant Baptist church. My grandpa was the pastor there.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, it looks like the the freaking White House. It's a small form figure of the White House, basically. Their
Hmm.
church is over here in Oregon, and I've had a hard time because I don't think Protestantism is right. My uncle recently has gotten really red pilled on the JQ. And every time he tries to talk to my grandpa about it, he kind of like freaks out. He's like, no, I
Hmm.
don't even want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything about it. And my uncle is a normie, basically. Like he's not listening to Nick Fuentes, you know? He's
Right.
just a
Right.
normal person who's on Instagram and is seeing kids in Gaza get blown up and is seeing these APAC money coming into our, our funding. And I think a
So
lot
it's
of
impossible to
Protestants.
it's impossible to deny. It's impossible to not observe.
Exactly. And that's why I'm at the same position as you and Atlas, where it's like it's hard to like navigate from here. And one person I'd like to see on your show is Pine Sap. He's an OG Groiper.
Oh, cool.
Atlas had him on his show very early on, and I DM'd with him back and forth a little bit. He was on Jubilee,
Oh,
crazy
really?
video with Mehdi Hassan,
No way.
and people were shitting on everyone in that video in the comments. It was Kai Schwemmer um, and Pine Sap. Everyone else, there, I don't think they had like much of a social media following, but
Okay.
yeah, I DM'd him about Catholicism because I'm like, I just don't know. I want to believe in a church, in a one true church. I do want
Yeah.
to believe in that, but it's hard. It's really hard for Protestants or even someone like you who didn't grow up with religion to like deal with that. And Atlas is at the same place I'm at. Atlas Thugged, if you don't know, it's like he's really struggling with this too, where it's like, do I go to Orthodoxy? Do I go to
Hmm.
Catholicism? Like he's at a Lutheran church right now and they're preaching some stuff he doesn't really like. It's like really
Hmm.
hard for Protestants to turn from that type of church that's like free and open. There's no real like hierarchy to something that has a hierarchy. And I've been really struggling with that recently.
Well, that's an interesting point. I've had the same struggle, and it's something that is a question for me because I would go to Catholic church when I was a kid, but like I was a kid, like I didn't necessarily have like a lot of faith. My parents didn't really talk about this type of stuff. My dad still has kind of like a secular like atheism. It's like he wants to believe, but he doesn't really accept like the books or like the way it's gone down. Like he's just like he'd say things, he'd get drunk, and he'd be just like, why doesn't he just come down and just like tell us? And I'm like, well, he did. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like he did come down and tell us.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually before you go on, I
yeah.
actually listened to your show today and you talked about your liberal father and that's like that is the framework of like liberal boomers. It's like,
Yeah.
if God should just come down in all his glory and he should just show us he's real so we could all believe. It's like, okay, so is that really a choice? Is that really
That's what I
something?
said. I like that's like you don't have to have any faith if it's concrete.
Yeah, it's like looking at a rock in front of you and saying that's a rock. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so now
Well,
you just like
obviously.
looked at reality, great.
Yeah,
But
great.
but
So then what's the virtue in that? Like, how is that
and
virtuous? It's like
and,
the
and
the point is, I remember this. Sorry to interrupt you, man, but I
no, you're
remember there
good,
was
you're
just
good.
years ago. I worked with this chick, and she was pretty hot. She was like a model. This was in L.A., and she was like telling me how when she was younger, there was this like rich guy who like kind of basically like offered to like take care of her entire life, if he'd marry her, and she didn't want to because she didn't really care about the guy and didn't really love him. And so she just kind of was like, no, I'm gonna go find love or whatever. And she's like, so fast forward to now, like years later, like maybe I should have. And I'm like, well, like the virtue in making a virtuous decision is not because there's a guaranteed positive outcome. The virtue is that it's the right thing to do regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, Joey talked about this in his conversation with the Frojax brothers, where he said morality isn't something you can just do without like people seeing it. It's something you do by yourself when you know you're making the right decision and no one else can. And that's a Jewish construct, by the way. Let's be honest. Like their whole religion is based off of how can we lie to God but still get away with it? And it's really like a gross
Yo,
behavior.
It's weird to me. Like, you know that guy Vrillium, that YouTuber Vrillium? I think we've talked about
I
him.
don't like him. Don't like him at
Yeah, you
all.
don't fuck
Yeah.
with him. A lot of dudes over here on like the dissident groypers don't really fuck with him. I fuck with him sometimes because I think like his content is pretty good. But any
I'd
reason I
agree
bring
with
it up,
that.
yeah, the reason I bring it up is because he puts out some stuff that's kind of deep diving into like the Talmud and the way Jews view God. And it's actually, if you go back and read the Old Testament, like he's right. Like God is like a dude that like lives in the other room in the Old Testament. Like the way, like in, especially early books like Genesis, like it's like they, who's it? Who's it? Lot that goes to Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's like God's like they're basically debating, they're like negotiating how many good people he has to find in Sodom to like make it acceptable for God to not destroy the city. And you're like, what? Like why? Like how does, I don't understand. Like, why is there a debate? Like, why is there a discussion with the Almighty and the Infallible? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's very odd to experience. So I think like, and that's something that William was pointing out. I think that there is something to that on that faith.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like the whole liberal thing too, is like, why would God destroy a whole people, you know? Like, why would God come into this place and destroy the entire, like, kill the women and children? But then when you really look into it, it's like the women, children, the fathers, everything, they were demonic. They were sacrificing their children on the altar, at least one of their sons. They were doing all this crazy stuff. And it's like, if you don't wipe out that civilization, who's to say they aren't going to get bigger and create more of this like disgusting like problem? And so for me at least, it's like, okay, a lot of these liberals do think that, a higher power doesn't exist or whatever, but the belief in them is the only thing you really need to understand where he's coming from. It's like if you were living next to a neighbor and, their firstborn son had to get murdered on a golden calf, you'd be like, okay, I want these people like not only out of the neighborhood, but killed. Like, I don't want to deal with these people anymore, right? It's like,
Well, it's interesting. Like, you listen to Daryl Cooper at all, like Martyr Maid?
I've listened to a little bit of him, but only through like Dave Smith, um, libertarian type stuff. I get it. Yeah.
He's not. No, he's like a Christian conservative. Dave's more like but well, he's more, look, the virtue of Daryl, not, he does have good political insight, but the virtue of Daryl is that he's a historian and he's incredibly uncompromising in his pursuit of truth. And so what he does, like he did the Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem series, which is about the settlement of Israel in Palestine. And he starts at Zionism in the 1800s and he walks all the way through up until I think 1948. I think that's where it ends. And it's like 25, 30 hours. He's read every single subject, every single book on the subject that he could possibly find, and then he tells the whole story of it. Right. So it's like he does these really comprehensive historical analyses and storytelling about these intense, history things. Right now, what he's doing is this series called Enemy, or The Enemy, and it's about World War II, but it's all from the Germans' perspective. So it's like what conditions existed in Germany to allow the rise of the Nazis and this like whole, like their relationship with World War One and what they lived through leading into World War II. It's fascinating. But the reason I bring up Daryl is because he was talking about the Old Testament versus the New Testament, where he had like he would look, he puts himself in like the eyes of God, looking at these people who continue to disobey him and sin, and they don't do what he says, and God gets frustrated and like does these horrific kind of like Old Testament violence to them to get them to do the right thing, to understand. And then he says that God does the ultimate sacrifice and comes down to earth so that he can experience life from exactly our perspective and to walk through it. And so that, Jesus would be the final human sacrifice that was necessary. And that it was like a gift to us, so that we would understand and he would understand and we would be closer through what Jesus' sacrifice. So it's like that's I think the difference in tone with the Old and New Testament. That was his interpretation. Like I thought that was pretty insightful.
No, I totally agree too. Especially because Judaism did spawn out of the Old Testament and it kind of spiraled out of control after that. If you really think about it, uh, Jews in the Old Testament were meant to follow God, but as soon as Jesus came down, they rejected him wholeheartedly. They're like, this is a terrible human being. He's the worst
Well,
person
not
on earth.
not all of them, because the ones who didn't
Yeah,
became
not all of them.
Christians,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, not I'm not saying all of them, but it's a generalization just like we talk about today, right?
right.
We talk about Jews and their control of our government. But most of them did. They really hated Jesus. They thought he was a heretic. They thought I mean, they were the ones who killed him on the cross, really. They got the Romans to kill him on the cross, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
that
especially the
totally makes
rabbis,
sense.
because it's like he challenged the power, right? It's because like you're
Yeah.
no longer the church, I'm the church. My word is the
Yep.
church, you know. And so it became this thing where it's like destroying a power structure, and the Jews at the time were expecting a sword. They were expecting like a subjugation of their sort of Roman like their Roman overlords, and he's like, no, 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 we got to love our enemy, and they're like, what? No, we fucking don't. No, no, we do not. And so, yeah, they had a bit of a disagreement about it.
And that's kind of a reflection of today with Israel and Palestine. It's like they would never love their enemy. They want their enemy destroyed. They want them obliterated. They don't want any of them on the face of the earth. Maybe the couple on Israel's side who live there who are more of the Zionist types, they don't want anyone near them to be their adversary. They hate that. I mean, could you imagine us just like completely bombing Mexico because we had like a little disagreement, or like even with our immigration mostly coming from Mexico, it's like imagine the United States just like bombing the shit out of them for like just because of that. It's like okay, well we can like reform our system a little bit. We could probably do some things here, but Israel
I,
really does think about it as life or death.
I will say it's a little bit more than a little disagreement. Like they've been going back and forth like this for a long time. Look, I think that the Israelis are savages, but they have suffered a lot of like terrorist attacks, bombings, like the intifadas. Like there's been a lot that has gone on where they have like a rage in them with these people. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying it's important to understand, like, that there's like a history here. But I think it's to me it's not even necessarily like the bombing. I mean, that's part of it, but it's the cruelty. It's the shooting of kids, the shooting of pregnant women, the double taps, like the bombing and then hitting the emergency workers. Like that I don't know how they live with themselves. And the point of Mexico, it's like, dude, like we can't even tell these people, no, you can't come in, let alone sitting on the border with sniper rifles shooting their kids in the fucking head. Like, it's a
Yeah.
crazy different. When they say, Israel's Western civilization, I'm like, you are not part of my civilization, brother. We do not have the same values at all.
No, totally. They are completely different, and not only they are different, they are immoral. They are an immoral people, not as a whole. I'm not going to say that, my coworker right now is Jewish. He's a great guy. He's my favorite coworker I've ever had. I mean, he's probably only a quarter, he's a good dude. He's my favorite coworker, literally. But as a whole, their civilization, the way they act, the way that they just decide to double tap, like you said, when the school in Iran first got struck with the schoolgirls in there, I honestly did kind of think it was Israel. And
I
it's
was
a real,
surprised it was us. Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame that it was us. At least if it
I,
was them, we could be like, okay, well, there it is.
Going back to the beginning of the conversation, right? Because I was saying that I was a MAGA cheerleader. That like this Israel thing, then the Iran war thing was really the thing that did it for me. So last summer, I was just kind of doing because I was on the side of Trump. I was pumped. I thought we got here. we won, you know, like everything we're gonna shrink the federal government, you know what I mean? We're gonna end unnecessary foreign wars, we're gonna crush DEI, we're gonna have a great economy, everything's gonna be fantastic, we're gonna get mass deportations, we're finally saving this country from the wretches of the left, you know? And then I remember when Operation Midnight Hammer happened, like that's when I was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He said no new wars. Like this is completely within the realm of a war. This is the type of thing that could lead to another war. Like I lived through the Iraq war and Afghanistan and I watched that shit go out. I was just watching a documentary about that today. Actually, it's an old one called No End in Sight. And I was just reminded of just like how demoralizing those wars were and how awful they and how long they dragged on and the costs and the human costs and the savagery that went on. And when I saw him doing this, like I was just like, what's going on? And I think I was like, oh, okay, that was just a little blip. He appeased the Israelis, but you know, that was just, you know, he's back on track. And then you just see as it all unraveled. And then by the time, I think probably by the time mass deportations weren't happening, I think that's when I was like, I'm off this Trump train. This is all bullshit. He's not doing it. Once the Iran war happened, I was like, nail in the coffin. It's over. But I remembered seeing some of the more like the MAGA influencers I used to follow. Do you know who Razor Fist is?
I've heard a lot about him in the Groyper sphere, like a
Yeah.
lot about him. Like they make fun of him a lot. I never really saw his X account because I wasn't on X before.
Well, he's a YouTuber, and like, you know, in his own right, he's actually a pretty decent YouTuber. Like he had this whole video about how the commies infiltrated Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, and how that kind of McCarthyism wasn't really a witch hunt. They actually were USSR funded communists that they were looking for. He's got a good video about Lincoln and how, you know, the truth of sort of like the like some of the truth about like Lincoln during the Civil War and this kind of untold thing. So he's a pretty decent YouTuber, but he's a MAGA sycophant, and Nick has clowned him quite a bit. And so I think like he's very sensitive about all that because they made him look like an idiot. And he's like this insult guy and this like intellectual. I don't think he liked being dragged. But I remember him right around the time of the Iran school bombing, like you brought up. He was coping like, oh, what, just like this blurry picture, like, oh, that's not evidence, we don't know. And I'm like, oh, wow, like very happy I've departed from this company because, bro, like that's clearly a Tomahawk missile. What are we doing here, dude? What are we doing?
Dude, totally, man. And you know what the funniest part about that was to see all the other MAGA people on Twitter cope. It's especially at the beginning of the Iran war, let alone that. Um, I did see some MAGA people cope about that strike, but the funniest part was the beginning of the Iran war. It was like, well, Trump said he was going to do this in the 80s or 90s or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's like, really, bro? Like he campaigned like what,
This about
30?
Iran. It's like, yeah.
He campaigned 30 years later saying no new wars, and then this happened. Well, he
Yeah.
did say it in 94. It's like, okay, bro. Well, that's not
I
what's
don't give
going
a
on.
fuck. He didn't run on it. Yeah. I
Well,
don't care.
imagine your boomer, like a boomer who's now against Israel back then saying, like, well, you know, we got to support Israel. And now a boomer saying, well, Israel's kind of messed up right now. I don't really like him. It's like, are you going to take the word of the new version or the old version? Really? Like, what are we
Right.
doing
Right.
here? It's like,
Yeah.
we're
He
going to do
said, you know, you
revisionist
said,
history.
yeah, you said you liked Israel in 1983, so you need to ride that out for the rest of your life. It's like that what that's not how this works. Listen, man, like if you campaign on specifically no new wars, that was unambiguous. There was no room for interpretation. It wasn't like I'm going to end the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and then that this one technically doesn't fit that. Like he said no new wars, you know, unequivocal. So excuse me, to do this is such a betrayal on the deepest level. It's like, and it was inside of a year. You're like, all right, bro,
Dude,
I'm out.
100%. And I actually re-listened to the Nick Fuentes Charlie Kirk episode about him getting assassinated.
Mm,
And Charlie Kirk was one of these people who was super against the Iran war. This is a little bit of
yeah,
a different topic from that. Um, but rewatching it recently, like when that happened, I got super emotional, dude. Like I was
me
at
too.
work, I was on my forklift, and I like look down at X for 1 second. I see a video of Charlie Kirk getting shot in the neck, and I didn't like this guy.
Yeah.
And this is like one of the biggest examples of Christianity between the left and the right. You know, Nick didn't like him at all. They were enemies. But Nick is a Christian. I'm a Christian. I didn't like him at all either. But it hit me like a gut punch when I saw him get assassinated. And Nick's words on his assassination is the best, probably the best stream he's ever done in his entire life. Because it
It
came from
was,
the heart and you could
yeah,
tell it. And not only did it come from the heart, but that was his enemy.
yeah.
Could you imagine your worst enemy dying and giving such an amazing speech like that? I rewatched it 2 nights ago, and I just remember the feelings I felt from when he got shot,
Yeah.
and it was devastating.
Bro,
Regardless,
I didn't even know anything about, like, I knew Charlie Kirk, but I didn't know anything about the Groyper Wars. I didn't know anything about anything that went on with him and Nick. Like, I got up on that later. I watched some like YouTube documentaries or whatever.
yeah, the
But
Groyper War. I think it was Groyper War 2, by Militant Groyper. If you want to check it
yeah,
out.
Militant Groyper, yeah, that was the guy. He did a really good documentary on that. But I didn't know anything about that. All I knew, when I don't think I ever watched a show of Charlie Kirk's, but I knew him like from being around. I knew his clips and stuff. And when he got killed, dude, that like put me in a legit depression for like a few days. Like I was like in mourning. And it wasn't even necessarily that it was just that that guy was so fucking reasonable. He was a good dude. Like, obviously I disagree with him on Israel and all that. But he was like, he seemed like a decent guy. He would go there and talk to people, and the fact that the left looked at him as such a villain simply because he contradicted their narratives, like it really affected me, man. That was something that was like, wow, this is different than just political differences. We're in a war here. We really are in a war for like the soul of the nation and the safety of ourselves. Like, if we don't win, like, are we all gonna get Charlie Kirk? You know what I mean? Like, is that how they'd like to have it? Like, because he got killed talking, and then the left, a lot, not the whole left, but enough people on the left were like, "That's what you
Celebrating,
get
yeah.
for being a bigot," and you're just like, "Oh wow,
You know,
okay,
the worst part about that for me was at the time, most of my friends were online, and I was on the way home crying about it. You know, not because I'm a bitch, but because I care for people, bro. Like, I deeply
mm,
care for people. I'm a Christian. Like, I have emotions. I'm a human being. And I got home, hopped on Discord with my friends, and the first thing I see is Charlie Kirk memes, and everyone in the Discord is making fun of him. And I
wow,
blocked I blocked every single one of them and left. And I stood tall on my beliefs. And I actually had a friend I talked to recently on the phone, and he is not fond of Israel. And he said when Charlie Kirk died, my first thought was to celebrate, was to be like, oh yeah, fuck this guy. He
wow,
said, he said, a couple months later, when I really came to Christ, I realized how disgusting that was and what an evil individual I was being to make fun of someone else's death.
wow,
And
that's profound."
I ended up telling him, I was like, we are way far right wing of him. So if you think if they're gonna laugh at his death but not at yours, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah,
And that hit him very hard. He's
yeah,
like, man, that is true. Because
yeah.
Charlie Kirk was basically a liberal. Like, he
I mean,
defended gay
seriously.
people, he defended trans people as long as they weren't kids. You know, he was very liberal. And
Yeah,
when
I would
he
see his
died,
speeches. He would say that
yeah,
same thing about, Israel, and just, it's one of the safest places for gay people, as if that's virtuous, like, that's a positive thing. And yeah, he was a Christian, certainly, and like, yeah, he supported Trump and helped get him elected and stuff like that, but like, no, he's like a centrist at best.
dude, 100%. And that's why it hit me so hard. And especially the Sam Hyde video. Dude, I hate to say it
Yeah.
because I'm a man, but I was bawling my eyes out watching that. Because Sam
Dude, that
Hyde,
so sad.
he is like a meme guy. Like that's his whole thing. He was getting choked up. Like
Yeah.
he was about to start bawling. I was crying because of that because I realized how big of a deal that was. And when he said we are Charlie Kirk, he showed pictures of Arena Zarutsa. He's like, this
Ah,
is your daughter. This is your
yeah,
sister.
that's right. That's right.
Showed pictures of Charlie Kirk. This is your brother. This is your father. This is you. It's like, yeah, that is us. And we're
Yeah.
about to be wiped out, and we're gonna make fun of the one white guy who was like trying to have a public conversation as like basically a centrist.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's really what
And we're
upsets
and
me
we're gonna
about.
celebrate. Like, there were people that were like, they were pumped. It was like, that was, enough people were excited that he died, and I was just like, bro, like, look, I'm not. It's not right to kill anybody, but it's like, um, when a public figure gets killed, it's like if it was like a U.S. president or something, say like that, like it would be bad, it'd be devastating. But the thing about a U.S. president is like no matter what, they all have blood on their hands, right? Especially in the modern age because of all of our foreign wars. Like I'm not justifying it, but you can understand that a little bit better. You can kind of understand like it's like that's sort of the game you're playing to a degree, in being in
Yeah,
politics. Like talking about politics should not be. That's not the game. That's not what anyone signed up for. Was to get that you might get assassinated for trying to have reasonable conversations with college kids to bring them onto the right. Like, and the fact that that was seen as this great evil, an evil good enough that he should have been killed in their eyes, was probably the most like upset I've ever been at the political discourse. I found, because I feel like I always make the effort to be compassionate, to be like accepting, to not condemn. I might make fun of them or argue with them or disagree with them, but I would never want them dead because they disagreed with me politically. Like, I'd never even crossed my fucking mind. And all these people out there, all the TikToks and you saw how many people were just like pumped. I was just like, holy shit! Like, are you guys even human beings? Like, how are we? How are we in this share the same country? Like, that's terrifying.
yeah. And another thing I was gonna add on to that, it's like that's one thing I'm really like as Gen Z, I'm 24, like I've said, it's like the most disappointing thing was like Charlie Kirk got turned into a fucking meme.
Yeah.
He died to become a meme. Like, let that ruminate in your head. How disgusting is that for a guy to get murdered in cold blood? And now there's a song called "We Are Charlie Kirk." Really? Or
You know
memes of
what?
him? Like I just don't. I don't get it as Gen Z. Like I just don't get it. And maybe the people who made that didn't like him or whatever. But I really do hope they ruminate on the thought of him being dead now. I really do hope that they realize how much that like messed up our country for like even now. I think there's going to be repercussions into the future of people being afraid to go onto college campuses and speak up. I think there are going to be a lot of people afraid of that.
To me, the darkest part of Charlie's death was the way Netanyahu immediately used it to like reinforce his like military savagery that he was engaging in, and like read the letter and basically was like, "Hey, Charlie said it's cool, we can kill Palestinian kids, so we're gonna keep doing it." And then the de-evolution of Turning Point, Erica Kirk, whatever's going on with her, like I don't follow what Candace talks about with her, but I do see the video clips and I'm like, that is fucking weird. She is weird. And it's like this whole thing, and she becomes this weird public figure when that wasn't her thing. And then it's like the what's a co-opting of Turning Point to push like Hezbollah and like Israeli talking points is like, I know he was a pro-Israel guy, but it's different when he's saying it and you're using his death to kind of validate it. Like that to me is far darker.
I actually saw a clip recently where he said that if he does die, I'm not sure the exact context or whatever. It's something like this where if he does die, he wants his wife to take care of his kids and just like stay pretty much stay out of the spotlight. Like just like,
Really?
it was something like that. I'm not sure the exact
Uh,
words, but there was a clip recently that came out where he's like, like, and he even said, "I'll appoint so and so to Turning Point USA CEO or whatever," but it wasn't her. And that's what
damn.
really disturbs all of us is
Mm,
that the fake tears, the GOP shill show for his death. And I know this episode is coming out a lot later than his death, but this is important, and not only important to me, but for the future conversation of not only women but all of this stuff. It's like we really do need to take charge. We need to change this stuff, because if not, this is going to happen more often than you think. Like this type of death, this type of despair is going to happen way more often than we could ever even imagine.
yeah. And look, Trump bears a lot of the responsibility for kicking the door back open for the left to take power in this country, because he's done such a bad job. He's completely destroyed the coalition that he built that got him elected. This war is the most unpopular war in American history from the outset. I had people in my chat be like, "No, Vietnam." I'm like, "No, dude. Vietnam was popular when they launched it. It became unpopular as it dragged on.
Yeah.
This was unpopular from the jump. No one wanted it, and so he's destroyed all this political capital that we had. So we're never going to get mass deportations now because no one's going to have the political will, or specifically the political capital, to execute it, or the kind of recultural alignment that we could have accomplished with this administration. Now that like I said, all that political capital is now expended on this fucking war that no one wanted, that got us into a complete capitulation and failure to surrender. And now, all you've done is strengthen the opposition. The opposition's going to win in the midterms, and they're going to have a much more advantageous position to win in 2028. And so, what'd you do, man? You basically like put all of us in fucking proverbial coffins, dude. Like, what the fuck?
And not only that, Trump's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death was disgusting.
That was
That was
so gross.
that was so dark,
It
bro.
was
Like
dark, bro. That was
like
dark.
I already didn't like Trump, but that made me think like he's going to hell, bro. Like
Yeah.
that type of reaction for someone who you would consider a friend is gross. And not only that, but you're talking about the Iran war. The deal is over. We are living in a time right now, the deal is over. Israel invaded Lebanon again. They're bombing them
Mm-hmm.
again. So
Yeah.
what did Trump really get out of this whole Israel America relationship? Nothing. And he let his friend die and he did nothing about it.
That was his response. That video, it's like, are you serious? Like, that's all you got to say is look at this fucking ballroom? Like,
Yep.
I know that Trump is like, loves to spin things and loves to kind of throw media like questions back in their face, but like, he just got killed. He was your friend. He was at the White House all the time. That's the best you've got. That's the best eulogy you can have. I mean, look, I don't know. I can't read minds. But my observations is that was JD Vance was fucking furious. That was my impression. He seemed to like kind of share the fury of like the American right, that like this decent father got shot in the neck for saying things that libs don't like. Like, he seemed to be genuinely upset about it, and he's a fucking Peter Thiel construct skin suit man. Like Trump, you couldn't even fake it. You couldn't even like manufacture the emotions to convince us that you care. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man?
Totally. Yeah. And we got to realize about JD Vance, as much as he is a construct, he's still a human being. And I think Trump is just jaded. I think he's very jaded from all these years of attacks and the media and whatever. And there's no excuse for the way he responded to Charlie Kirk, though. It's like, even with everything he's been through, even if he wasn't my best friend, if he was a distant friend who got killed in that way, even think about someone you knew in middle school and you found out they got shot like that at a public speaking
Right.
event, you would still be devastated. You'd still have a lot to say.
Look,
There's no
you know who
excuse.
I used to know on a personal level, which is odd, but do you know that reporter, that like Twitter guy, Michael Tracy?
Yeah, yeah.
So I like, I don't know, 18 years ago, maybe more, I was a camp counselor with him over the summer. You know what I mean? And like I kind of knew him. That's about it. We never kept in touch or anything like that after that. But now, like I remember, I was hearing someone talk about him. I don't know if it was Nick, it was somebody else, and I was just like, they're like, talking, oh, Michael Tracy said this. I was like, Mike Tracy, Mike Tracy? Like, it was like the guy that I know, and it was him. I was like, get the fuck out of here. He's a famous journalist. I had no idea. But if that guy got killed, you know, I would be upset and I would say something, you know, like about it if someone asked me. You know, it's like someone I
Yeah.
don't even know. It was from 18 years ago, but what we did kind of know each other for like a summer. You know what I mean? Like, and that's such a minute connection. And for the guy who's always he's your friend. All you
Yeah.
can say is look at this ballroom.
Yeah.
What the
And
fuck
that's
is wrong with
that
you?
is the whole boomer mentality. It's all about wealth. It's all about like gaining resources. Joey talked about on this recent podcast I was telling you about. It's like the
Hmm.
boomers are all about resources. Like, you know, your closest friend dies, you know, probably most of his friends die like every other day because they're boomers. But the worst part is like this was a young guy. He had kids, he had a family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like your dad's probably a boomer, right?
Yeah.
If he knew someone that was younger than him that like was his old coworker or something, and you know he was like 32 years old, your dad wouldn't be jaded about it. That's why there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse. And it was super depressing. And my mom is like woke on the JQ. She's woke on immigration and everything, and yet she's still a Trump supporter. And it makes me want to shake her and just say, like, what is going on inside your head? Like, can we really just not do this anymore? Like, Trump has failed on everything, and you're still like, okay, well, the plan's in progress. He's gonna make sure Israel gets it. It's like, really, dude? And and like I called my mom after Charlie Kirk died, and she felt the same way, but she didn't care when Trump said what he said about the ballroom. And that's the type of sycophancy I
Isn't
can't
that
stand.
Yeah, shouldn't that be like an insight into his character, of to like what type of a guy he is? Um, you know, as far as like red pilling your parents, so to speak, it's something I try not to do, or I do it incrementally, right? Like, I've
Yeah.
gotten my mom like pretty red pilled on the JQ. I'm getting her there, you know, and she's still gonna be a liberal forever. Like, she can't break out of that, but you know, I am getting her to be like observant about these things. Ever since I started like hating Trump, is when I think she started listening to me. You know, so she was able to actually hear what I had to say.
Yeah.
But I think it's like one of those things where I don't know how constructive it is with especially your parents, right? They're older, you know what I mean, and they're probably not particularly politically active. It's the type of thing where it's like I'll do it gently, but I'm not trying to win every conversation. I'll try to offer education or insight that I have or I've collected that I can give to them and like give them something to chew on and think about. But you know, it's like you know, I kept trying. The only topic that I would ever go out like I go hard on is like my dad and God. I try to God pill my dad. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you're getting
Yeah.
old. I don't want you to die and go to hell. Like, you know, it's like, I want you to listen to this. But it's like, I find the older I get, or maybe just the more I do this, I don't know, but I find it's not necessarily productive to have political conversations with people who are incapable of having a complex conversation or are adversarial emotionally. Like, it becomes this kind of, this is a losing game no matter where this goes. Like, I can make a bunch of great points and come away feeling like, oh, I won, or people who are watching think I won, but then I've weakened a relationship that I have, and like, what's the point in that? Like,
I
that's not constructive, you know. Like, they're not running for office, I'm not running for office. This isn't a public debate. Like, for me, I just think it's more important to maintain these relationships than it is to like win politically.
I totally agree. The difference is my mom has been with Trump since 2016. She's heavily politically motivated. Like
Oh,
basically like she used to do marches for Trump in 2016. I didn't join
oh,
her because I thought it was useless to go out there with a stupid fucking flag and like wave it around saying like while cars are passing by honking because they like the flag or whatever. I was like, yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. It's kind of pointless. And it's the same thing with
That's
liberals. That's
gay.
what I was. That's what I was trying to tell him back then. It's the same thing with liberals. When you go to a part of town, there's a bunch of liberals standing there with like dyed hair and they have like a pro Kamala sign. You're not like, woo, yeah. It's like if you're not already there, you're not gonna like it. And
I
I tried to
saw I just moved into this new town with my mom, you know, to like be with my mother for this
yeah,
like
I
kind
heard
of, you
about
know,
that.
tough, yeah, it's like tough shit we're going through. So um but it's like this little town in New York, in like kind of like upstate a little bit. And the first day I got there, like the second day I got there, we were driving into town, and there was this protest, like a no, like a little mini No Kings protest, dude. It was so gay. Like I saw them and I was just like, oh my god, y'all are so corny. But there was one girl with like an APAC. She had like a old woman had like an APAC money poster. And I was like, all right, well that's all right. That's kind of based. It's kind of based
That's
right there.
something.
That's
For
something. But I was just like, yeah, oh my god, this is so corny.
Yeah, near me by my work, I was driving in my work truck because I work for like a flooring company. I drive this truck around and I saw these people standing in a corner. It was a like middle-aged man in like a, out of high school like dyke standing there with like a sign. And I was just like, what are we doing here? Like, are we really changing anything?
What is the point?
And and I see this all the time. I live in Oregon. So like
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon is just like the gayest city you could ever even
Mm,
imagine in your wildest dreams. And
hmm.
Joey from Right Wing Coalition, he's from Seattle, which is like
Yeah.
the mirrored version of where I live, except
Yeah.
I think Portland is even more gay. Except for in Seattle, Chaz happened back in
Yeah.
that whole thing happened, which is crazy, bro. You should watch I think there's this guy named Ghost Gum. He made a documentary about Chaz in Seattle. Everyone should check that out. It's hilarious. But what I will say though is with my parents, they are red pilled on the JQ. They are
Hmm.
red pilled on like literally everything you could imagine besides Trump. They don't
Hmm.
understand that Trump is not the guy. And my parents would also never ruin their relationship with me over politics. It's
Oh,
just
that's good.
it's a really strange relationship where they do think that Trump is the end all be all to save the country.
It's crazy.
And my point to them is like, even if Trump does restore some of America, it's like there's still a political battle that's going to go on forever, and they just can't contend with that. They just think
I
that,
guess maybe they look at it like he's the dam, you know, like he's holding back the flood of the crazy libs. I guess like it's kind of the best you could give him, but he hasn't reversed anything. I mean, it's literally it's the GOP in action. It's the shoring up the gains of the previous liberal establishment. It's like okay, you know, kids can't cut their cocks off, but adults it's fine. You're just like, what is happening? How is this our
yeah,
right wing party?
it's like executive order after executive order. And I
Yeah,
don't think my parents understand, like, I've started to understand politics more in the past, like, year and a half, 2 years through Nick than I ever did. I'm sure it's the same way for
totally.
you, where it's
Oh
like,
my god.
before then, it's like your view of politics was really just like this cultural divide, not so much like a huge political thing. And
Well,
that's what's crazy.
that was why I was so captivated by Nick, because I listened to his interviews and I was like, this guy isn't that fucking horrific right wing like monster that they describe him as. He's smart. He's compassionate. He has like a really like intuitive and insightful political vision. Like it's very. I'm like, this is nothing like he was described. I was like kind of like perplexed by that. You know, it was I didn't expect this. So I watched a few of his interviews and I found myself like really like okay, like gravitating towards this guy. Is this guy pretty interesting? Once I started watching his show, I was like, oh my god! First of all, he's hilarious. Like he
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so goddamn funny. Like I know. Why did I never hear that part of it? I didn't know that he was hilarious. He is, but he talks about politics with a level of insight I've never heard anyone talk about it. And even people that would like agree with him, like maybe like a Dave Smith or something like that, like his ability to pick out the important details of like who someone's connected to, where they went to school, what their connections were there, you know, going through the Heritage Foundation or going through the Aspen Institute or like this and these like connections of this network and who works for what hedge fund and like just piecing together the entire political landscape, you're just like, oh, well, now I get it. Like that now I completely understand because he's so articulate and so talented at being able to put it all into complete focus. And I honestly, I there's few people that I even am aware of who have that level of acumen. I would say Scott Horton is one of those guys. I would say maybe Academic Agent is one of those guys. No one else comes to mind that has like that level of political insight to be able to see the whole picture like that.
Yeah, and one quote I will cite from Atlas is Nick Fuentes is the best orator of our time. And that's just true.
It's true.
Like his way with words is beyond like even my comprehension. Like in order to understand a show he does, you have to watch it 2 or 3 times. And I don't do that with every episode, but like at some point you really do have to like focus on each individual segment he does in order to understand it. And that's why we're groypers. Because at some point it's like, okay, if no one else is giving me insight, I have to go where the insight is. And
Yeah.
if everyone else is calling him a gay fed, that
Yeah.
seems like an attack from the inside, not the outside.
Hmm. Well, it's crazy when people don't give him credit. I think I said something as much on my show sometime this week, and I said that about Tucker Carlson, where he was with Megyn Kelly. He's like, "Who cares? Who cares what Nick Fuentes says?" You
Yeah,
know, in his
yeah.
little Winnie the Pooh ass
He said
voice.
he's irrelevant, actually.
Yeah, and I was like, "Listen, man. First of all, that's numerically not true. You can prove that that's not true. But beyond that, like you're smart enough to know that he has spectacular political acumen. So you you saying that is disingenuous. Like that's just you're smart enough to know the difference. And so why are you saying that, right? Like
Yeah,
that's an attack
yeah.
and that's like a dismiss like so that the thing that always bugs me is when people don't give him his credit. Look, you can disagree with him, you can say white identitarianism is dangerous and this Christian nationalism thing is very dangerous and whatever. You can have all your criticisms that you want. But to not give him the credit of being the genius that he is, I think all that does is strengthen Nick because that the second someone like me encounters him, you're just like, oh, everything I learned about him was wrong. All the criticisms are wrong. And now I'm actually more primed to listen to what he has to say because I know there's this big smear campaign out there to discredit this clearly intelligent guy.
Yeah, so I think I figured out how to screen share here. Here's
Okay.
something Joey said earlier um, about the women question. We're going on to something a little bit different. I wanted to pull this back up so you could see it for yourself.
Okay.
But one thing I will say before we go to that is that I want to know what your opinion is on Tucker real quick. Because for me, I do think that I don't know if he's necessarily a Fed, but I think he has his own agenda. I think that he wants certain things to happen. And he's been working in media for so long. Joey's talked about this before, where it's like you can't work in media for 30 years and not know what's going on.
Yeah.
And Nick has been in this shit for 10 years, and
Yeah.
he hasn't said anything up until Nick started blowing up. So, first of all, what's your opinion on Tucker, and what do you think's going on with him? Yeah, I'd really appreciate some insight on that.
So I was listening to an interview with Joey and Pete Quinones, and Quinones' opinion is that Tucker knows exactly what he's doing, and he feels that his job is to give people like 80% of the story so that'll lead the audience to someone more intense, like Daryl Cooper or even Nick Fuentes, right? It's like he's like this jumping off point where he'll maintain his ability to communicate at a high level with a high audience and not step in the kind of like the very significant cultural landmines and alienate people or make himself seem like a kook or too far right. Now, I shared that belief for a while, but I don't anymore. I think actually in reality, Tucker's goal is to get them 80% of the way and keep them there. I think it's a limited hangout
I agree.
because
Yeah,
when you listen to Tucker, he contradicts himself a lot. He countersignals Nick all the time for no reason. There's literally no gain other than to kind of maybe virtue signal to some unseen party because he had him on. Nick, after the show, nothing but praise, positivity all the time, and talked about it. But then every single time he came up, every single time Tucker would do an appearance and Nick Fuentes would come up, it was like all this shade. It was like these underhanded attacks, and you're like, so what is this for? Why are you doing
Yeah,
that? Why
he
did you bring
said
him on?
specifically, Tucker said, I was trying to dissuade Nick from being an anti-Semite. I was trying to make sure
Yeah.
he didn't believe in blood guilt. And
And it was like, first of all,
recent
who the fuck do you think you are? Like, he's a man. He's an adult man. Like, he's gonna make up his own mind. Like, what, he was his father? Like, you're gonna like guide him and usher him into like thinking the way you want him to think. Like, what a condescending way to talk about the guy.
yeah, 100%, bro. It, and recently, Nick, at least more recently than the interview, he's come out and said that Tucker consults Peter Thiel on every major life decision he's ever made. That is a crazy statement, and I don't think Nick
Yeah,
would lie about something like that. Like
I don't
after
think so
all he's
either.
been through, like that could be so easily disproven
Hmm.
from Tucker. He could come out and
Or
be like,
denied.
"Yeah, 100%," but it's not.
And so I went back and watched some of old, because there was when Nick took some time off, I went back and watched some old episodes, and I watched his Tucker deep dives, and the things that he uncovered in those episodes was mind blowing. Specifically, the one that I'll probably never forget. Excuse me, is when he's talking with Candace Owens and he says, "Oh, I had no idea my father was in the CIA. I learned this after he died." And then Nick finds clips of him in public interviews, one with Sean Ryan, where he basically he says, "Oh yeah, I my father was in the CIA and blah blah blah." And then he pulls up like another one, and you're just like, that's not like a slip of the tongue. That's not like I misremembered or I said, like, you made up a whole like that because his father had just died. So you made up this whole thing about discovering he was in the CIA after he was dead, but then meanwhile you've publicly also said you knew. So which one's the truth? Probably the fact that you knew, because why would you make this up? Why would you make that up and then realize, and then the lie you made up turned out to be true? Probably not. Probably that you knew. And then he uncovered all this stuff in his history where like he went to Nicaragua during the Contra stuff, like the Iran
Yeah,
Contra stuff. Like, I just went there on a weekend and I just wanted to, and you're just like, no one just goes to a war zone to like check it out, dude. Like there was some really suspicious stuff. And the fact that he's not transparent about that is what makes me question him a lot, because he's very transparent about some pretty humiliating stuff. Like he talks about like his addictions, and they're very insightful. I think like when actually a lot of times when Tucker talks about his addict past, it's very insightful because it's like it's very honest, it's very transparent, it's very self deprecating, and it's like it humanizes him in a really interesting way, and it feels like it's from the heart. But the fact that you're going to lie about stuff like this and not be transparent about it and tell different versions of the story, that's suspicious, man. Something's up. Like that, you don't just do that. That's something's going on there, especially when it's associated to the intelligence community and his connection with Peter Thiel and his connection with JD Vance. And you're like, you start adding this up, man. Something's wrong. Something's off.
dude, totally. And even his brother Buckley Carlson came on his podcast a couple of times, and they're like,
Yeah,
"We had an interesting life. Like we had a very different childhood. We went to all these different places. We had, yeah, our father was amazing though. He was a strong man. I don't doubt that, by the way. But what I am
probably.
saying is
Yeah.
like, yeah, you went to all these different countries. Like most kids just don't grow up with that, especially in the
No.
way of the world we live in today.
Yeah.
Like people just don't have money to do that.
No, and regardless, I mean, look, some people just have money, like that is what it is. But it's just the way. I guess it's the insincerity, the counter signaling of Nick, and then the wacky shit that he gets into on his podcast. Now, listen, I mean, everybody's got to get views. The YouTube's a grind, content creation's a grind. I understand, but you're just like, what are you doing with this UFO shit and this like wacky? What is that? Like this like off-brand Alex Jones? Like, what are you doing? What is this?
Dude, yeah, 100%. Also, if I share my screen, can I click on a different tab here?
Um, I don't see anything on the screen. Did you share it yet?
No, no, not yet. I'm just
I
wondering if
think
I
so.
do. Okay,
I think so.
window, here we go. Share. Okay, I'll go full screen real quick.
Let's go.
All right, here is a bit of this conversation. This is the mark I made.
I don't see it, by
Really
the way. I
good.
don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you press share. I still don't see it.
1 second. Should be. Here we go. No, it did not work.
Do you
Share
see in the
screen.
bottom next to the where it says present? That's where.
Yeah. I don't have a second monitor at the moment, so it might not work.
Should work. I used to share things without a second monitor. I have one now, of course.
It should
But
be shared right now.
nah, I don't see nothing. Ain't
Yeah.
nothing there, bro.
All right. Yeah, it's not going
But
to show up.
well, you can read if it's an interview. You can read it.
Okay, yeah. Let me go to that real quick right now. I'll just
And you
edit
said
this part out.
this is with Joey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Joey. 1 second here. Videos, recent. Here we go. Okay. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. Joey says, while voting for the people who refuse to give it. Wait, this is going by way too fast, bro. Let me slow it down. It's hard to read when this shit's going by so fast. Sorry, I'm so new to this, bro.
Is it? Did you have like is it closed captions? Is that what you're reading?
Yeah, is there any way
Well,
to?
if we've got a second, then let's try to figure out. You can probably you should be able to share
Yeah,
your screen. So you go to if you click present and then share screen, does nothing come up? Like in the
no. So if I click share screen, it goes to I can click Windows and then it will show. Should I click entire screen?
you can
That
do
won't even
that.
work.
I did Chrome tabs. Like if you like, I always just share because it's an internet tab, right? Does it say? Does it say you could? Does Chrome tab an option?
Let me check here. Share screen, window. Okay. I was using Brave browser, so that's
Oh,
probably why.
okay. So that's not an
It's
option.
no, it has an ad blocker built in, so that might have something to do with it, but I'll pull it up right now and then I'll edit this part out. Yeah, okay, I found it. Yeah, the reason I downloaded this is because it has an ad blocker and I hate dealing with like 10 ads.
Oh, I get it, bro. I feel you.
All right, let me pull it up to where I'm at here. 56. I'll pull it like a little bit before. Okay. There we go. Share screen, share. Yeah, it doesn't work on StreamYard or on Brave. Oh, wait,
That's
right
weird.
here.
Do you want to send me the link and I can do it on my end because I can share
Here we
screens
go.
from my
I
side.
think it's showing now. Is it working?
I don't see anything. Oh,
Okay.
you know what? It probably is, dog. It's probably the layout issue.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Under the different layouts underneath the screen, there might be one where you can share the window. Like it'll be like two heads and like a window. Try that.
Two heads in a window.
There you
Okay,
go.
there we go.
Now share the thing. We should
Present.
both be able to see it.
Share screen, share. Here we go. All right, you see this?
No, I don't see anything on my side.
Bro,
That's weird.
let me try it
Why don't you send me the
again.
link and then maybe send it.
Okay, 1 second. I will send it to you right now, and then I'll send you the time as well.
All right, you sending me on Discord?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Copy. All right, here you go. And that
Okay.
time is at, let's see here, 56 minutes.
Okay. 5600.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. Share screen, Chrome tab, Right Wing Coalition. Boom. So now you just need to add it down below.
Add stage. Perfect.
Bam. All right. So you want to just play it and we'll just pick up the show from there?
Yeah, we'll plot pause in between it. It's we don't have to go that long, but this is just on the feminist question. It's very interesting.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
If there isn't some level of truth to it. So I think women, they've actually been the ones that have been wronged by all this, because order is what protects and nurtures women and children. Without that, we see what we have right now, which is a bunch of women on SSRIs, running HR departments, single without kids. And the biggest point that I try to make to my audience, because we have a lot of young white guys that listen to us, a lot of guys will go down the incel route and begin to resent women for all these problems that come downstream from feminism. But the problem with that is that that isn't a final solution. We have to figure out how to lead ourselves back to a more symbiotic relationship between men and women. And you're right, feminism is responsible for getting us here in the first place. It's just the question of how we can reverse that. So how do you think, I mean, I'd be curious to ask, how do you think we could actually...
I was just saying you can pause whenever you want, by the way. You're good.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, I think he's right. Before we hear Joey's response, I just think that that's 100% true. It's this thing, you know, I was talking about this on my show. I think I was even talking to you about it, but I was talking to my mom about the thing with women and the way they coach young women into this sort of careerism, this feminist construct of like the most fulfilling thing that you can do is to have a career and serve some corporation. Like that's you know, feminist girl, go get them. And then and she was like, "What's wrong with that?" Like she kind of got defensive, like reflexively defensive. And I was like, "There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that." First of all, it's contrary to the foundation of society, which is like the family. Like if the society's an organism, the family's a cell, and we need, you know, a bunch of strong cells. So right there. But it's like I was like, what's the most important? Like who's the most important person in like every human's life? It's like it's their mom. Like who do men call out for on the battlefield when they're dying? It's like it's their mother. Like it's like this thing that being a mother is somehow not an important position. It's like it's literally the most important person in almost every single human being's life. Like that's a very virtuous and valid position to step into and do well. Like that's so important.
Yeah, you actually told me about this exact conversation. It's totally true. Luckily, my mom is not on that side. She's more of like women should be women. And you know, a career is great in the meantime before getting married and everything. But once you get married, your first priority should be your children. And my mom was in a unique position because my dad was like abusive. He cheated on her. He left her, all this stuff. And, you know, the number one thing in her world was me and my brothers. And so it's just different. I think liberal women did have a uniquely nice upbringing where, you know, they had kids, but they also had their career. They put their kids in daycare. It was like pretty perfect image. And I think the older women, especially like older millennial boomers who didn't have that growing up, they do see the value in it. So yeah, we can keep going.
Yeah, and it's like just to get back to it, it's like I'm not shitting on my mother here. Like she was a fucking
No, not at
badass. Like
all.
she, you know, she was going to school, working two jobs while she was pregnant with me. You know what I mean? Like she was you know, and it's not, and I'm also not even discouraging women from working. I feel like a lot of women contribute absolutely brilliant things in certain fields. It's just that it's the culture of careerism that is the problem. It's the culture of dissuading women and sort of invalidating women who want to just who want to become a mother. Like that's some kind of, unambitious or,
Evil
low
thing,
status.
honestly.
Yeah. It's like this thing where it's like, I really think that culture needs to be corrected. And that's my biggest beef with it more than anything. It's like, it's not that
Totally
women
agree.
can't work. It's just that shouldn't be the goal. All right. Let's see what Joey's got to say.
Reverse something like that.
Well, everything you said is completely spot on, and I think what that obviously signifies is that we are living outside of natural law, natural order, right? If they want these things, if they're craving these things and they're not getting it, then some element of their soul is not being satiated or whatever. And
Pause it real
I
quick.
think that
Right before this, they were talking about like women's erotic literature and how like they do like want to be dominated by men. And in the society we live in now, like they take that out through their like desires, through like literature and movies, like 50 Shades of Grey. They brought this up where like that's the number one selling book and movie, and so they're talking about this in the sense of like women do kind of crave these things that are natural, but in kind of like a devious way.
There is a degree of that. There's also a degree of cognitive dissonance that is involved because submitting to a man in the cultural milieu that we find ourselves in is looked at as anti-feminist. It's patriarchal. It's evil. It's rape culture, whatever bullshit fill in the blank pejorative they want to use. But they still do have this intrinsic need to do so. So it manifests in, like you said, in a perverted way with fucking minotaurs and like vampires and shit.
Totally.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
what you kind of have to come to terms with is that they don't even know what they want. And they and in fact, it's probably a selection. I mean, I'm sure many have said this. It's a selection pressure in itself, because if they have a still target, then nothing progresses. Like, they are the catalyst for progression, because if there's a state that they can just be perpetually satisfied, then everything stops. Everything stops at that. And so they almost need to be, if not unhappy, unsatisfied marginally, to keep things pushing forward.
Dude, that's so base. Do you know who Patrice O'Neill was?
Yeah.
He would say that about women. He would say that like the perfect relationship is where a man is happy and the woman's just a little less happy, just not fully satisfied because of that desire to like kind of keep pushing and keep finding and keep tweaking. And it's like if she's satisfied, right, it's like it's almost like she's gonna find a problem or she's gonna find something wrong. So it's like she needs to just be in just like one little degree less happy than the guy, and then that'll keep her occupied.
And we've all dealt with this in relationships where like the woman will find one thing to like be upset about and they'll stick on it, even though the man is
the
like,
whole thing.
yeah, and even though the man is like, okay, where do you want to go to dinner? She's like, I don't know. You pick a place. It's like, okay, we're going to go to so-and-so restaurant. I don't really want that. It's like, okay, well, then you tell me. Well, I don't know. And this is exactly what he's talking about, where they don't know what they want. They want the perfect scenario, but like it's impossible.
And they worse than that is they've been conditioned to believe it's obtainable. Like it aligns too. If you look at like left wing ideology, especially like the kind of a more aggressive left wing, what they're struggling for is utopia, right? That's why, if you're going to be a charitable interpretation of what they're pursuing, it's utopia, because they believe that the only reason things are wrong is because oppressive factors have existed, capitalism or patriarchy, sexism, racism, whatever problem that they've identified as an issue in society. Well, that's why there's crime. That's why there's homelessness. That's why there's rape. That's why there's problems in society. And if we could just fix fix these things, then we will achieve utopia, which we all understand. It obviously is complete folly. You have to accept the fact that things are flawed, things are broken, and that's just the reality of life. We're fallen, as we were talking earlier. You know, we can never achieve perfection. Perfection will be achieved upon death when we go ascend to heaven. But it's like, that is the thing with the female thinking. It's like those two things are completely aligned. There's these perfect guys out there.
It's a fairy tale,
check all the, it's a total fairy tale. It's like but what my point is more that they're conditioned to believe that it's real because of social medias, like the interaction, the female to female social media, you know, like the female group chats, and then just the kind of prevailing culture that preaches this to women. So when things are dissatisfied in their relationship, that now it's like, it's existential. This is a crisis. Oh, I haven't found perfection. This isn't the forever person, or whatever language they're using. Like it becomes this another way to fracture the relationship between men and women. And I think like Joey's tapping into that really well.
100%.
No, base Joe.
Now, you guys are probably aware of the shit test.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know. I'm 27. I did not know this was a thing until maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. And I had no idea that anybody's.
Joey didn't have to. He's such a fucking Chad, fucking lacrosse player, alpha male. He didn't even know. No one. They never put him through a shit test.
True.
He didn't have to worry about it.
He's the GOAT, bro.
Could operate in that manner.
Yeah. He didn't. He's like, whoa, oh, they do that to guys? I had no idea.
I'll briefly explain for anyone in the audience. Basically, women, girls even, I mean, this happens very young. They will start to basically test men that they're with in a way. Maybe they ask for something that's demeaning or whatever. Not because they actually want it, but because if you give into it, that actually seeds you as unworthy, not strong enough. And they often don't even know that they are doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Carl Benjamin.
What's funny is, you know that woman, Rebecca Hargraves?
Yep.
She
You
admitted
beef
as
with
much.
her.
Yeah, I beef with her. We buried the beef. She said she's going to do the show, but it's been weeks, and I guess she's just super busy. She's doing a talk in New York in a few weeks that I might go to, because now that I'm actually here, like it's her and Cameron and like someone else. So I might actually go because it's down in Manhattan, and it's like not nearly as far as Manhattan was from Austin. So I might check it out. But yeah, I don't know. Eventually she's going to do the show. But she one day was talking on her show with Cameron and admitted as much. And said that she was like, oh my God, I've been doing, you know, fans pointed out something that she was doing to Cameron or whatever. And she goes, it was a shit test. I was giving me a shit test. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Like, she confessed as much that it's just this intrinsic part of who they are.
Wow, bro. That's actually a crazy thing to add on to this video too. It's like that's something completely separate from what they're saying, and yet it's complete evidence. That's awesome.
Isn't that wild? I know it. It's like, it's one of these things that's important to understand. You know, I read this meme online, you know, on my X feed or whatever. And it was like a kind of a black pill incel post. And the guy was talking about how, you know, he did, you know, he got out of this tough relationship and things were tough, but, you know, he got his life back together. He started going to the gym, and, you know, he went out one night and he got his confidence up, and he went up to this girl and she said, you know, and he said, how you doing or whatever. And she like said something demeaning. And like, that was the end of the post. And it was supposed to be like, modern women are evil. And it's like, no, nigga, like, you need to read up on shit tests. Like, you need to understand what she's doing is testing you, and you just need to be cool with it. You just need to be able to roll. Like, if she says something sarcastic, you know, like, there's lots of ways to handle it, right? It's like to own it and like, you know, build upon it, or to just, you know, say something about her. Like, there's ways to handle shit tests. And it's like, dudes don't know that that's out. Dudes don't understand. And it's like, you know, from a female perspective, it makes sense, right? Like, look, if you think about it, especially like an attractive female, it's like every guy around her would fuck if given the option, right? It's like, if you know, like a very attractive girl, it's like they just have, so they have to have a mechanism with which they filter out potential mates, because she literally can't fuck everybody. And in order for her to produce like healthy, safe offspring, she needs to know that the guy that she does pick is going to be the right one, right? This is like an evolutionary mechanism that human beings have developed. So it's like when you understand it from that perspective, like, yeah, it can be shitty and it can be evil. And I'm no fucking male feminist, but I am just saying it's important to understand from their perspective why something like that exists.
Totally. And any guy who has ever dated a girl or even like tried to date a girl has been through this type of thing where it's like, if you can't be strong enough to pick a place for dinner when she doesn't know what to pick, then you're not him. If
Yeah.
you can't make her happy enough when she's down, then you're not it. That's just how they
Or
operate.
if you can't be comfortable with yourself when she makes like a joke or a dig at you,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you let it hit, you let it land. It's like that, it's like that's the type of stuff that you need to be able to roll with because it's, and also it's probably a decent indication you're not doing so great. So it's like maybe you
Totally.
need to, build some frame. You know what I mean? Like go, hit the gym more or do some martial arts or something.
Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot with my brother too. He's been struggling with women a lot recently, and what I've realized is I've like kind of stepped away from dating for a bit is the more you get away from that whole scene, the more you realize women aren't everything, and the second you realize women aren't everything, the more that you get women.
Yeah,
If you're
100%, dude.
focusing on women, your life will be destroyed. And that's been the same throughout history. The men who focus on the most attractive women and try to win her over, your life will be destroyed. It's not a matter of what, but when,
Yeah.
It's a matter of what time it will happen.
And doubly so if you're focusing on getting laid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
That's where it gets very bad.
And many others make the point that a lot of the feminism stuff is a societal shit test that our ancestors basically failed. And it always should have just said no. No. And the sad thing, and I mean there's a reason why you have to.
I said that exact same thing to my buddy on stream years ago. My buddy Vigilante Williamson, we used to do streams together, and I said that same thing. And I didn't say it like definitively, but I was like, I feel like this whole feminism thing is just like a societal shit test. And fucking A, Joey, absolutely,
Dude, I really do wish that I could articulate as well as he does, man.
yeah.
Joey
Joey's smart.
Joey is a generational talent, not necessarily the same that Nick Fuentes is, but in a completely different and extraordinary way. He has
Yeah.
a way with words that is different than Nick. Nick is more like a funny, he can grab people's attention. Joey is more of this like intellectual but super deep thought person. Like when he thinks, like you can, I thought about this recently when Nick said, people don't hear me. When I talk to people, they don't hear me. You can see in the video, Joey is thinking about what they're saying, and he is waiting to like gather his thoughts to respond. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, dude. And like, I'm reading his book, right? And it's amazing how well he encapsulates certain things. Like he said something, and I texted him and laughed about it, but it was something he said. The left, who seemed unable to identify a glass of water without a chemist present, and I was like, oh, that's so well put. Like, that's such a perfect example. Like, we don't know what a woman is, and you don't know, you're not an expert. All this stuff, that kind of like expertism. He just summed that up so well. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
nailed
I've
it.
read
Like
through
that.
I've read through the whole book. It is amazing, dude. Hopefully I can have him on sometime. Hopefully when I'm a
Yeah.
little bit more professional and I can figure this stuff out. Obviously I'm new to this, but dude, I really do love Joey. I think he's an amazing guy. You can tell he's genuine too. He thinks about what he says.
Yeah.
And I'm not even half as smart. None of us are really.
He's a smart motherfucker, dude.
100%.
And I like,
that's
what I like? Him and Dave Green had this conversation, the distributist.
yeah, I watched that as well.
You watched it? It was a great conversation, right?
Yeah.
And what I really liked in that conversation was their kind of rejection of what they called kulakism, which is like this kind of not white trash, but this kind of unsophisticated, but like not affluent, but financially comfortable part of the culture. And I thought that was so refreshing to hear from someone on the right, because there is this kind of tendency, this sort of reflex that people on the right, they don't like lattes, or they don't, whoa, we drink like craft beer. Well, that's fucking gay. Like that's for, city millennials and stuff. And I think of this shit and I'm like, bro, like you're like a white nationalist, yet you reject these things. What that is the excellence that comes out of European culture.
It's
right?
it is the culture. It is.
Yeah.
And Nick talks about this too a little bit in his shows, where he's like, he says driving a stick shift is gay, and if you really think about it, it's
agree.
like, and if you really think about it too, it's like all this country stuff where it's like gay to drive an automatic car. Like, who was the automatic car built by? Like Europeans. Like, we're gonna deny the excellence of that because we want to be old fashioned and drive a stick shift and drink black coffee. It's like, no, fuck you. I want to drink
shitty
a coffee.
Beer.
Yeah, I want to drink a coffee with a little bit of creamer in it, put some sugar in it. Like, I don't want to drink black coffee. I don't want to, it's this whole denial of like Western civilization.
That, and it bugs the shit out of me, especially when it comes to like the refinement and the excellence that Western civilization has produced. Like these guys who have this kind of like, I just drink Coors. I don't drink any of that fancy shit. It's like, bro, like that was these Germans like manufacturing beer on a precision science, man, and making this spectacular product. These craft beer guys, that's what they're trying to emulate. This is what European excellence looks like. And so it's like you're just your wignat rejection of all that. I just have no time for it. And I like the fact that Joey and Dave were talking about this kind of like aristocratic ambition. I'm like, fuck yes, that's exactly right. That's how it should be. We don't have to have low tier taste. It doesn't need to be the most blunt, gratuitous, thing that because we're men and we're it's like, no, their sophistication should be on the table as well.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah. These guys are cool. I want to check this interview out. This is good.
Yeah, they're wig nuts. I think they're very smart. Yeah, they are. These are the people I was talking about who are more of on the white nationalist side. They're not Christians. They're not pagans. They're deists. So
yeah, you're saying
they're good guys. Like, they're very smart. They're intelligent. I just wish they would come to Christ and realize this isn't all just about white people.
Yeah.
And Joey's definitely like kind of keeping back on the Christian stuff because he knows he's probably seen these guys around. They're huge on Instagram and everything. So I think he is holding back on the Christian stuff. He does talk about it, but these guys are on our side, but they do have more of a white nationalist leaning.
Well, look, people evolve, right? I think a lot of people on the dissident right found themselves through way through like a libertarian pathway, right?
They actually talked about this through this.
Oh, really?
Sorry to cut you off, but you should definitely watch this. Honestly, you should do a stream about this whole episode. I'd recommend it because the guy Jackson, the guy who looks a little bit more pale with the white shirt, him and Joey had the exact same story of coming to more of the right-wing, hard right story. And they talked about it throughout this podcast. I just chose a small segment because I think this is like really encapsulating the women question, which isn't talked about as in depth as it should be. So,
yeah. Well, I'll probably cover this on my Sunday show that I do on Nav. The right.
I'll be there.
Fuck yeah. But what I was saying is like, so the way like a lot of us found ourselves through the dissident right, through libertarianism, I feel like other people will find themselves, through could potentially find themselves to Christianity through this kind of, like you said, like a deism. It's like, there that might be a stepping stone where you sort of accept that human beings have this innate nature. And, maybe you think for a while, well, that's the way it should be. That's the way we should order society. But then as you go along, you start to realize, that's why religion exists, because people knew, of these sort of base kind of instincts and these sort of, the way we would default to these certain behaviors. But religion actually accounts for that and creates a nice structure that satisfies people and creates a coherent society. So look, I always have hope for people. I tend to not think of people as like living in a box forever, especially if they're open-minded and willing to have conversations and hear different perspectives. So who knows?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that at all. I was just trying to
I didn't
their
say that you were.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that you were. I was just building off that. I'm just saying, like, maybe they can come to
100%.
Christ eventually. Let's hope, let's pray for him.
Yeah, these two are actually from where my friend is from, and he said he really likes them, and I explained why, like, you should be weary of them. But I also told him, like, I do agree with almost everything they say, except, they're talking to, like, what's that guy who denies Christ on Twitter all the time? Like, he's making fun of people who...
I have no idea.
His name's
Satan?
Adam something.
No.
Yeah, his name's Adam something, but
not Adam Mainstream Dissident, is it?
No, not for Mainstream Dissident. No, no. A different guy, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea who that guy is. It sounds gay.
It is very gay.
Stuff paternally in the way that you would treat your child. It's like if a child does not have the wisdom or intellect or experience to know what's good for them, and you do, it's your responsibility to uphold that, even if they aren't happy about it. And to your guy, I can't recall who said it, but they will simultaneously crave that order while voting for the very people that refuse to give it. Because there is this struggle, and the only way. So when I say disenfranchised women, I mean that's a very broad statement. But I think what we really need to do is sell them on the idea that being a woman is not being a defective man.
Right.
It is its own.
Based. That's fucking based. I think about that too. I would wrestle with this a lot, with feminists. Because early on, right, your kind of deflection is like, what are you talking about? Like, you have like your pick of like sexual partners. Like, if men could have that, if men could say, oh, we can have our pick of sexual partners, but we'll make 15% less in the workplace, we'd all be like, yes, please, yeah, like we'd sign up for that in a fucking instant. But it's like, it was this thing that like there's this inherent. It's in feminism. There is like a. What's the word? Like, not insult, but there's like a degradation to females, like, or maybe it's like a degradation to females as they exist currently. Like, it's like there's nothing beautiful or valuable in them until they become these sort of male facsimiles. And it's so destructive. It's almost like I would imagine that would create a lot of self-loathing inside of these women, because if they found themselves adhering to their natural instincts or their sort of, more godly side, then they'd be like, oh, I'm a bad woman. I'm a bad feminist. Like, I shouldn't think like that. I shouldn't have these thoughts and these feelings.
Yeah, and you can totally see that within like feminine relationships. They will hate on women all day, but as soon as like a trans person comes into their life or like as a friend, they're like, oh, you're the best. Oh, stop, queen.
Yeah.
It's that type of thing where they do kind of hate their own gender, at least as far as recent history. You see this all the time where they'll have like a gay best friend who's basically almost a woman, but their own women best friends they're talking shit about all the time.
Yeah, and then there is a natural infighting amongst women. I heard
totally agree.
Yeah, there's some fuck, I forgot who it was. It was some philosopher, but he was saying that like, men only compete with men like on their level, like they don't really compete like up or down necessarily, because it's like they're, you're kind of competing for the same resources at your level. But women compete with all women because inherently they're competing with all women against each other for the highest status man. So no matter what status they are, they're always competing with other women. That's why you'll see like a really wealthy, like woman will be very kind of shitty or cruel to like a younger, like poorer woman, because it's like she's a threat. She's a potential threat to like losing her status in her relationship. It's like the female kind of infighting is just, it's part of femininity. It's part of, that's one of those things feminism tries to like engineer out of women, and like you just simply can't. It's too ingrained. It's who you all are.
Totally agree. And I saw that even in high school. I was a class of 2020. And wokeness was still, that was like the peak wokeness was like 2016 onward, right? Like that was like
Yeah.
huge.
That's when it really accelerated.
And the women there, even though they were liberal, they still like were super catty to each other. Even if they were best friends, they would post an ugly picture of their best friend just to do it, to compete with the upper echelon of like maybe the football player or whatever. You know what I mean?
Dude, my ex-girlfriend, like she had beef with this girl or whatever, and they went to some party where their mutual was there, like a mutual friend, and my girlfriend's trying to be like, okay, like, I'll be like the bigger person and this, that, and the other. And then this girl took a picture of all of them, and my girl was on the outside, and she edited it to make her look fat.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, holy shit. Like, it was so fucked up because I'm like, obviously that's not what you look like, but they like, yeah, she did this like editing thing to make her like stomach look big, and it was like this awkward angle. Oh my God, my girl was not happy.
That's terrible, bro.
I know.
I'm so glad
so
men
diabolical.
Aren't like that.
No
I'm
way.
so glad, like, I'm so glad men aren't like that, bro. Like, no matter how,
because we have
like,
to deal with violence. Because we have to deal with violence, because we understand that somewhere in our makeup, somewhere in our dynamic, there is violence that like could potentially come our way if we go too far. Women don't have that.
so succinct, bro. That is so succinct.
Yeah.
That was an amazing way to put it. Yeah, there's a threat of violence with men, and with women, like, what are they going to do? Grab you by the hair, maybe?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, they might fight, but that's not real. With guys, it's like,
fight.
you'll have to confront someone potentially. Like that's always sort of on the table.
Totally.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, brother. I think that's gonna do it for my time. I am fucking starving right now because I just went to the gym,
man.
pounded like a protein shake, but I'm so hungry right now.
Hell yeah, bro. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And I'll
Dude,
have to figure out a way to edit all of this. If sometime you can help me out with a thumbnail or something, that'd be great.
Oh, I'll be happy to help you, brother. Anytime, man. And for anyone watching, just check out my stuff. Foulball Productions
Yes,
on
sir.
everything: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I actually had a relatively viral TikTok this week. I was just
What was that?
All right, let's. It was just something about the Pakistani grooming gang thing. I could share it. Just fuck it. It was just me telling you is going to be sort of stupid.
Yeah, show it to me on X. That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Well, I appreciate you for coming on and everything. You're a dope guy. I appreciate talking to you last time. It's a little nerve-wracking talking in front of a camera for the first time. I'm sure you know what I mean.
Brother, I used to get such anxiety when I would do this stuff. Like I used to, there's the just intensity, especially when I was going solo for like the first few times. Like literally no one was watching. I don't know why I had any anxiety, but I did. It's a skill. Like honestly, it's just something that you get better at the more you do it.
Dude, I've noticed you were just rolling with nothing.
Oh, thanks, dog.
But at the end of it, you could tell I got a little bit more warmed up to the camera.
I didn't even notice. You didn't seem nervous to me at all. I had no idea.
When we were talking on the phone, I was like a lot more relaxed, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It felt like I was hanging out with you. I didn't even notice. So.
Hell yeah, bro. Well, I appreciate you so much. I will text you about the thumbnail and everything, and I'll try to figure out the editing and whatnot.
Hell yeah. Well,
all right, shout out Foulball Productions, bro. Shout out Foulball.
Hell yeah.
See you, dog.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.